Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Good Grief Life After Loss. Today, I am joined for an interview with Emma Cook. I actually know Emma through her brother Ryan. He and I grew up together from elementary school, and we were both part of our high school's grief group. So having Emma here does really feel special and a bit full circle. In this episode, Emma shares her personal journey after losing her dad to suicide. She shares how she navigated the uncertainty surrounding his death and what she has learned about healing along the way. She also talks about her experience as a counselor at a grief summer camp for young boys. And throughout our conversation, she brings such thoughtful attention to men's mental health, which is a group that is just so often underrepresented in these conversations. Emma truly touches on so many things that I personally felt and related to as a young person experiencing grief, and I found her perspective to be both so grounding and refreshing at the same time. I just cannot wait for you guys to hear this episode. Emma is incredible, so without further ado, let's get into it. Emma, thank you so much for being here on the Good Grief podcast. I'm really excited to share your story with my audience. So thank you for just agreeing to come share your story with my audience.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
How are you feeling, I guess, in general about sharing your story with the public? Is it something you're familiar with doing, or is this kind of newer?
I have kind of it's better to be overly vulnerable than underly vulnerable is a new mindset that I've had recently. And it's sometimes leads to me feeling really raw when I'm like, should I have shared so much? But then in the long run, I always know it's better to have shared how I was actually feeling in that situation rather than hold it back. So I feel the same kind of going into this.
I already listened back to so many of my episodes. I'm like, oh man, that was an oversharing moment, but I agree. It's better to just get it all out there than wish you said more. So I'm glad you're going into it with that perspective.
Yeah, I had a therapist that at one point he told me, he was like, when vulnerability meets vulnerability, that is when real connection is made. And so I really live by that a lot.
I love that. It's amazing. I would love if you could just start off by introducing yourself to my audience. Who are you? How old are you? Where do you live? What are you doing? And then obviously what brings you to the podcast?
Yeah, so I'm Emma. I am 21. I am from Utah. My brother was actually in the same graduating class as Skylar. So I've always known of Skylar, and didn't you guys go to a dance together at some point in high school? Didn't you?
We were in the same group together.
Okay. But so I've always known Skylar. I remember when Sam, your brother, died very clearly. And then I think a year after your brother died, my dad died. And so same town. And yeah, my dad died by suicide when I was 13. And it's been quite the journey of going from 13 years old, having my dad just died, to being 21 and feeling a lot more secure in my own grief and a lot more explorative in my own grief. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I so vividly remember when I heard the news of your dad dying, because I remember walking into school and everyone immediately approaching me and saying, oh my God, Ryan's dad just died. What do we do? What should we say to him? And me being like, what the hell? Why am I the spokesperson? So I just very vividly remember that day. And in a moment, we'll get into what you remember from that day. But first, would love if you could tell me about your dad. What was your relationship like? What do you remember most about him?
Yeah, so my dad's name is David Charles Cook, and overall, just the funniest man alive. People will tell me that I'm really funny like my dad, and that is the highest honor to me because my dad is so funny, and he would just he was really good at one-liners, and people will be like, Emma, your one-liners are incredible. And I'm like, oh, that's my dad coming through, and it really is something that I love being similar to him with. He was also just such an athletic person. When he turned 50, he was like, I don't want to be an old man. So he decided to sign up to swim a 5K. which is like absurd. To run a 5K is one thing, to swim one is like diabolical. And so he was like constantly doing that. He was doing Ironmans and was an avid skier. He loved to ski and just like do anything outside that got his body moving. And that was probably his like happiest of places. I grew up with him being my soccer coach and him being my brother's baseball coach. So he was definitely athletic and wanted to bring that into my brother and I's lives. Instead of getting us things for our birthdays, he would get us experiences. So him and I went hot air ballooning one time. We went to the Taylor Swift concert one time, and he was definitely a big appreciator of being in the moment, experiencing things with the people you love. And yeah, and now that he has died, like I value him taking me to a concert so much more than if he had gotten me like whatever I would have wanted at that age. To me, that's so valuable. So I've really translated that same appreciation for quality time into my life and letting go of like a lot of like the material things. When it's like when I have good people and I have good things, like that to me is like so much more important to me. And I think my dad really instilled that in me.
I
Yeah,
love that. Thank you for sharing. He sounds
of course.
amazing. I can't remember if I ever got to meet your dad when I was younger, but I just loved hearing all those stories. He sounds great.
Yeah, he's just like a really cool person in my opinion, and like he grew up on the East Coast and moved to Colorado in his 20s to be a ski bum for a couple years, which was really cool. And I think as I've gotten further from his death, I've started to be able to remember more because like trauma can impact your memory so much that it's interesting that now I'll like remember new things about him. And so that's also been really cool. And then sharing them with my family or people that knew my dad or people that didn't know my dad is always really special.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, as much as you are comfortable sharing, I would like to kind of get into the details of like what do you remember from that time or that day of, finding out that your dad had taken his own life.
Yeah. So it's really weird to me to like timeline it almost because there's so many like blurriness. So I was in seventh grade. My brother was a sophomore in high school. And this is like a naturally busy time for everyone. And up until this point, we had never known my dad to be suicidal. And then right around that fall of that year, he started having trouble sleeping. He was gonna take a career change, like and things like the pressure of his life was just like really starting to like load on him. And so he ended up getting on some medication to help him sleep. And within 24 hours, he was suicidal. So I don't know a ton of details of like this time. I knew my dad was struggling and I knew things were happening, but again, it was like my mom, brother, and dad like protecting me as the baby of the family. So I knew things were going on, but I didn't have like the insight of what was actually going on, which in some ways I think is good, but in other ways I felt very in the dark at the time of being like things aren't right, what isn't right. So it's like the fine balance of like I was protected, but also I felt very in the dark. Yeah, and so the next about like 6 months were dedicated to trying to get my dad help and showing him that like we needed him to get help over anything else. So we moved out of the house for like a month, and then we had an intervention with his parents driving from Colorado to Utah. There was a lot of we did family therapy. I didn't like it. Like we did a lot to try to show him like, hey, like we're here for you, but we need you to like be here for yourself too. And so eventually at the end of March, he agreed to go to mental health and like some substance abuse rehab down in Arizona. And he was to spend like the next 6 weeks there. And so he left on like March 28th, and that was the last time I saw him alive. So he left and he was there, and my mom went down for like 1 week for the family week. I don't know a ton about like his time there. I know he like made friends that were there and things like that, but I don't know a lot about that. One of the only things I do know is he like did this like coloring sheet while he was in there, and in it there's like a note, and at the end it says like it's like I love his family and like all this stuff, and at the end it says like expect a miracle. And that was like the motto of the rehab, and he like I now live by that. Just like expect miracles all around you. It's in my Instagram bio. I am just like walking around trying to expect miracles, and it's shocking how much they show up when you expect them to. So that's that. And so he's in Arizona, and that week that he's supposed to get out was also my spring break from school. And my friend Hannah had invited me to go to Florida with her. So I went to Florida, and I was flying back Saturday, and he was getting home from Arizona that Friday. And so as we're flying back, we're walking to the car to go to the airport, and I throw up. And I was like, that's really weird. I'm like, I don't feel sick. Like, what's happening? And I was like, I'm just hot. Like, I've been in Florida for like a week now. I was like wearing long pants on my way to the airport. I was like, I'm just hot. Like, it's okay. Like, once I get to the AC airport, everything will be okay. I get to the airport, and I'm like still just like not feeling good. I go to the bathroom, I throw up again, and I'm like, this is so weird. Like, what is happening right now? And throughout like the next, I'm like calling my mom, I'm calling my dad, I'm talking to my friend Hannah's dad, and I'm like, I like don't want to get on two planes today because we had a layover in Denver. So we decided that I was going to take the flight from Florida to Denver and stay in Denver overnight with my uncle who lived there. And so I do just that. I throw up the whole plane ride to Denver, and I land in Denver, and I like get picked up by my uncle, and I start to feel so much better instantly. And so I spend the night there. The next morning is Easter Sunday. So I wake up and I have brunch with my uncle and his family and all of that. And then I head to the airport to fly back to Utah. And so I get on that flight. I remember like Snapchatting my brother and being like, I have the whole row to myself. Look at all these snacks I got. Like I was like totally trying to brag to him. And he sends me a Snapchat back, and it was just like super short. And I was like, geez, like what? He's like in his bed, just like sends me a photo of a wall with half his face. And I was like, wow, he's not even letting me like brag to him. Like, geez. And I land, and because I was an unaccompanied minor, my mom was able to pick me up from the gate. And I instantly noticed she wasn't wearing makeup, and particularly mascara. The amount of times I've been like late to things because she's like, let me go put on my eyes. Like, I have to go put on my mascara. So I'm like, why is she not wearing mascara right now? Like, what is happening? But I was so excited to tell her all about my trip to Florida that I was just talking away out of the terminal. And so we get to outside of the airport, and I like go one way to like the short-term parking, and she's like, no, we have to go this way. And I was like, what do you mean? And she just turns to me and she goes, Emma, your dad died. And I just fell on the concrete and was crying. And I like vaguely remember a woman being like, is she okay? And my mom going, she just found out her dad died. And me just like crumbling on this on the floor. And we ended up getting picked up by our neighbor, and we made the half an hour drive back to our house. And I'm just so confused and crying. And when I open the door, like I see my brother and our neighbor's kids who are older, they're like in their 20s at this point, sitting on the couch, and my brother like sprinting over to come give me a hug. And like that hug alone, like I can still feel that hug. Like I can still feel that hug the way I can still see like the snapshot of him, and like I can still hear my mom and that woman talking about, I just found out my dad died. Like it's crazy the things that I do remember and how vividly I remember them. And so that night was really weird. I remember before our neighbors left, them being like, what do you need? I, having been being 13, didn't know what was going to help. And in every movie, ice cream helps people when they're sad. So I was like, will you go get me ice cream? And they brought me ice cream, and I don't think I ate it for like 3 weeks. Like I remember being like, oh, I should probably eat that ice cream. Yeah. And then the like time between that and the funeral with just like the house being flooded with people was also like such a weird time. And it feeling like everyone was pulling my mom away from me because they had so many questions and they wanted to tell her that they supported her so much. It led to me feeling really alone in a house full of people. Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. Thank you for sharing. We talked about this earlier. I obviously had heard your brother's side of the story, didn't know your side of the story, and that's crazy. I also can imagine for you to be traveling with friends from, the perspective of your mom and your brother. They're probably like, we have no idea how to handle this
Mhm.
situation. And yeah,
Yeah, and
wow.
they actually had told one of the Utah like news, like they had told like all the state troopers and like the media like don't release the story, like our daughter will not find out until like 8 o'clock tonight, and he died around like 11 or 12 that morning, and so it's like don't
Wow.
release the story, and one of the newspapers did, and so I actually have people that found out that my dad died before I did. And like
Wow.
so much of my mom and brother's day was filled with just don't let her find out, just don't let her find out. And like, um, yeah, like she just needed to, like, if I had found out in Denver versus anywhere else. Yeah. And like having my uncle know before me and being told if she finds out, you have to get on that plane with her.
Wow. Yeah, I was gonna ask, did your uncle know at that time?
Yeah, I know he found out before me. I just don't know when. But yeah.
How do you feel like, I mean, I think in general, losing a parent is awful and obviously will change anyone forever, but how do you feel like losing a parent to suicide specifically has like shaped your grief journey?
Yeah, I think the main difference is that there is an automatic stigma. And there's automatic assumptions. Like when someone like dies from cancer, the story of them going through treatment, of getting diagnosed, that's all rather similar to another cancer patient. And that's just not the case. Obviously, like all death and all grief is different, but then like with suicide, every single suicide's different. There's always a different why, there's always a different way, there's always a different relationship with the person who does die from suicide. And then it's stigmatized as well. So there's been so many times people will find out that my dad did die from suicide and they'll tell me that he's really selfish. And I'm like, well, you're just being rude and insensitive right now. And yeah, there's a lot of stigma. There's times when like I'll be talking that my dad did die and I just won't share why because there is such a different story around it. And I just have a hard time with people not understanding that you can't understand it. And like, I don't really know why. And there's a lot, there's like the basic facts of like, it's not my fault, and things like that. But I don't try to understand his decision making, but I do know that when someone is that suicidal, they feel like such a burden that they actually feel like they're doing the people around them a favor. And so it isn't really selfish. It is actually them trying to do something good. And whether or not it is good is not really in their minds at that point. And yeah, so suicide just has such a different relationship with grief. Yeah, it's just its own beast. And I think it's so much of everything in it feels isolating at times. And so by like talking about it and just being like, yeah, suicide happens and it's awful. And then also trying to like find solutions within it and knowing that like it is something and that can be prevented, but it also is incredibly hard to prevent. It can be done, but you need to find these warning signs really early. And it's again case by case. So yeah, it's isolating and hard and different and at the end of the day just kind of weird.
It's so unfortunate that the stigma, like even now in 2025, when I feel like everyone is being so open about mental health and the
Yeah.
conversations are happening and there has been progress, but like there is still such a stigma. And I can imagine that's really frustrating when you're trying to tell someone your story, like that question of like, do I include this piece or not? Is there going to be judgment? Like, how are they going to react to this is tough.
And there is a lot of awareness and initiatives being taken to preventing teen suicide, which, don't get me wrong, is incredible. Like, and all of this is really good work. But the leading demographic for suicide is like middle-aged men. So my dad's demographic, and there's not as much support. There's a lot of just man up. There's a lot of like obligation to support a family and things like this without the support and able to do that and to be able to express themselves and feel good within themselves to be able to provide and do the things that society has decided are essential for a man to do.
I also thought it was so interesting when you were talking earlier about how being a child, it's like it's hard to know how to support a parent in that situation. They also want to shield you from that. And I think even at our age now, to support a friend in a mental health crisis, like that alone is a difficult challenge, but it feels more natural, like more comfortable
Yeah.
to take that role. But I think to have to take that role with a parent is just so confusing, probably. And it's tough when you're young to know, like, how can I support and to even understand the weight of the situation.
Yeah, there's no rule book. There's no like little instruction manual on how to do this. And so it's a lot of just trial and error. There was a lot of trial and error in those 6 months before he died of like, what will this work? Will this? And yeah, and it still is between friends, myself, like there's constantly trial of error. What are the things that are going to help me feel like the best version of myself?
I want to kind of dive into what your grief journey looked like for you. So how did grief show up for you in those initial days, months, like the first few years after losing your dad? What did grief look like for you?
As soon as you become a kid that is grieving, instantly people don't want to break you. They're so scared of just like doing anything, and people are really just like watching what they say around you, and it almost is like you're all of a sudden like morphed into glass, and any gust of wind could break you. And even though it is so heavy and it is such a big weight to be carrying around, is grief, especially as a young person. We're not going to break if you say something. And so that was definitely the hardest part for a couple years, was one, me thinking I might break and other people thinking that I might break. And so it led to me not really talking about my grief. And even as like through high school, things were hard and I was like struggling with like my own mental health and things, I consistently blamed it on anything except for my own grief, because I was like, but I'm fine. Like, I'm fine. Like, my grief is fine. And I was living in the delusion that it wasn't the grief, it's my school and it's my teacher or it's this friend or it's anything but the elephant in the room. And as soon as I kind of started to realize, okay, the grief is a lot bigger, I started taking like my own grief journey a lot more seriously. And so that was doing a lot of therapy and journaling and reflecting and reading books and talking to my friends and my family and doing those things. And I'm so grateful that I did and that I took it so just like seriously, because I feel like for basically from the day he died till about a year ago, it was always like, it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll get better. And then through doing a lot of this work and really seeing how grief affects me and how it doesn't and what helps and what doesn't, which is different for everyone, I was able to like finally be like, I think I'm in the it got better part. And so I don't feel so much as though I'm waiting for it to get better, or I'm waiting for this and I'm waiting for all of these things to get better. Instead, I'm like, okay, it gets better. And even as like hard things come, I feel so much more equipped to handle them. I recently had another death in the family. My grandma died, and uh, being able to like navigate a new grief really showed me just how far I've come, and being able to like sit in my new grief and process it with my old griefs, and being able to see a side by side of, okay, like I'm really angry about this right now, or I'm really sad, or I'm, very happy of the time that we got together, and being able to balance all of those and know that it's okay to have multiple feelings about grief all at once is really incredible. And being able to like laugh and have fun and do all these things is really valuable to my grief journey. And I think for so long I lived in the, well, my dad died, so I have to be sad all the time mentality, which I think is like overly portrayed in media specifically. And when you're 13 and you don't know how to grieve, you're going to grieve how people do in movies. And it's the eating ice cream and it's the being sad a lot. Um, Unfortunately, I didn't get the crime fighting part that typically superheroes get when they have a parent die. Haven't gotten there yet. Maybe soon. Uh, and so, yeah, just being able to shift and mold in that way, and growing into someone where I'm a lot more proud of my grief, and I embrace it a lot more. And something that I'm really trying to get better at is just being like, yeah, my dad's dead. As soon as someone's like, oh, and your parents? Because I try to make other people comfortable whenever that happens. But here's the thing, they made me uncomfortable first. And so trying to like people please in that way is just hurting me. And it's depriving someone else from the truth of being able to just say, oh yeah, no, my dad, he's dead. Yeah, it's hard, and I don't always like doing it, but I'm trying to get better about just allowing the truth to be told. There's definitely some situations where I don't need to do it and I won't, but most of the time it's good to just say it.
Wow. I literally just resonated with like every single thing you have said there. It's all so relatable, from like people not wanting to break you and assuming you will break if they tell you anything or do anything.
Yeah.
And from like thinking you have to grieve a certain way because that's like what you see on social media and people are expecting you to grieve a certain way. And like
Yeah.
the, do I make someone uncomfortable and tell them that they just asked me an uncomfortable question, or do I lie and I've done all the lying and made up stories of like, oh yeah, no, I have an older brother, he goes to school in Utah. Like,
Yep.
and just hope they ask no further questions. But thank you for sharing all of that. That was great. I'm curious, did you have the opportunity when you were younger to like be part of any type of grief group or grief support system?
Yes. So I was able to be a part of two while I was growing up. So the first one we have in common was through our high school. So I did go to that. I liked it, and it allowed for me to feel less alone at school, and it was good. It was just so hard to like sit in a room and share our whole stories, which is an incredibly vulnerable thing to do during second period when you're supposed to be in algebra. Like they would like pull us out of class and like have us come do this instead, which is like definitely more valuable than whatever I was learning in like whatever class. But it was so hard to like then like go back to the next class.
Yep.
And to like have just heard like someone share like everything, and then you're like, okay, like gotta go to lunch now. Like
Wipe the tears. It's lunchtime.
exactly. So that one was it was intense, and it was good, and I definitely see the value in it. And then I also went to this program that was in Salt Lake, and it's called the Sharing Place. And I really valued my time there. My brother preferred the one at the high school, while I liked the Sharing Place better. He didn't even stay at the Sharing Place very long. But I really enjoyed the Sharing Place because it was kids who didn't know me really. We all went to different high schools. Like there was a nice sense of anonymity to be able to like go in there and be like, this isn't gonna like spread across the school or like anything like that. Not that the kids at the other one were doing that, but it just got rid of another sense of fear about sharing vulnerability. And so we would do a lot of different activities. It wasn't always the same. we would do like writing things, or we would do creative projects, or we'd listen to music about grief and things like that. And I'm still in good contact with the woman who facilitated that group, and a couple of the kids in there are still in contact. I actually have a tattoo for that place. We would like pass around like a stuffed orca as our like talking stick when we do our check-in. And so now I have a tattoo. I actually have 3 orcas on my arm. So it like represents that place, but then it's me, my mom, and my brother. And so I loved that place, and it was nice to be able to have that group, and we'd meet like once a month or whatever. And I see a lot of like good healing in there, and I'm actually looking into volunteering there now to be able to give back to the place that gave me so much.
That's awesome. I love the orca tattoo. That just gave me chills. I think it's really like, I think same as your brother, for me, it was the high school grief group that really resonated with me. For me, it was also that I felt like everyone in Park City had heard my story and they probably heard it wrong. And so I was like, let me set the record straight. This is the actual story. Whether the details are better or worse than they had heard, I don't know, but I like that opportunity. But I also love what you're saying about just like knowing that you can go somewhere where no one knows you and they're not going to tell anyone else. You can just do, say, act, cry as much as you want, and it doesn't matter. I love that.
Yeah.
Would you say was the sharing place like one of the things that made the biggest difference in your grief journey, or what allowed you to get to the place you are now?
I think the sharing place had a big part in that, because during that time when I was going there, it was kind of the only place I would talk about my grief and like really talk about it. I would, have a couple of conversations with my mom here and there. And at this point, my brother was out at college, so we weren't even living in the same state. And then yeah, like I wasn't always talking about it with my friends. And so like it gave me a space once a month to just talk about it and to like spend time in grief. So I think that place gave me a lot. And like sometimes I'm like, I didn't use it to my full potential, but I used it to the as much as I could at that time. Me at 16 used it to as much as I could and as vulnerably as I could. And so I think that had a huge impact. And then I also think seeing a lot of where I came from with wanting to like take my grief head on was not wanting to let it like snowball, because I knew it could snowball, and I knew that would lead me down a similar path as my dad into like a more suicidal area. And so I really wanted to prevent that. And so I did a lot of therapy and a lot of like grief specific therapy, and writing a lot of letters to my dad, whether they were really angry or they were really happy. And that was something that helped me a ton, was being able to like just write them out. And sometimes they got burned. Sometimes I still have some of them. And being able to like share what I was thinking and like have it feel as though it's going to him, whether or not it is, I don't know. But being able to have that like line of communication and being able to share how I'm feeling with the person that I'm feeling it towards is incredibly helpful. And then also just like being more willing to talk about it in my day to day is really helpful. So I think all my coworkers know about it, because like on Father's Day, I'm am making jokes that as a like server, I'm just gonna tell everyone that my dad's dead so they'll tip me more. And then also like making it my own relationship. So like when am I okay with jokes? Because I am more accepting of like the dark humor jokes, but not everyone can make them. No. And like it's like a fine line of like what I am okay with and what I'm not, and figuring out what it is that I am okay with and what I'm not, so that then I can tell people that is also incredibly helpful. I think a lot of my grief has transformed just from like these small little realizations that like I'm not the only person in the world that's grieving, and that I can take control of my own grief. And I had a therapist tell me there's no right or wrong way to grieve as long as you're not hurting yourself or someone else. And so from there, I was able to like lean into more like artistic ways of expressing these feelings and this grief or just different things. And once I realized that this really is my own and that no one else can really tell me how to do this because I'm the only one with the answer of like how my grief feels and how and even the story of my grief. So as soon as I like really took control of it, it changed a lot for the better.
I love that. It feels like you have developed a very healthy relationship with grief, which I like because I think it is difficult, but you did the work, which I love to hear.
Thanks.
One of the reasons I was really excited to get to talk to you today is because I recently saw that you had an incredible experience being a camp counselor at a summer camp for children who had lost a caregiver and a sibling, and I thought that looked like the most incredible experience and something that I'm jealous I haven't gotten to do myself. But tell me, like, one, how did you discover that opportunity and what kind of drew you to want to do that this summer?
It was incredible, Skylar. I spent a week in Maine at this camp for boys. So it's through this organization called Experience Camps, and they have camps in various places around the country. And I kind of just chose Maine because one, that was the one who the person who told me about goes to, and then two, because I hadn't been to Maine and I really wanted to go to Maine. And so it ended up being incredible. So they have boys camps and girls camps. They have them on different properties. So the one in Maine had the boys camp, which is the one I volunteered at, and then it also has a girls camp like right across the lake. And that's the same for all their programs across. And I chose the boys one and I was like kind of hesitant. I was like, which one do I want? Like I was like, I don't really know. And I am so grateful that I chose the boys. Because my dad did die from suicide and the most incredible thing to watch was like the older of the campers growing into like these incredible young men who had support systems, who knew how to express their grief, who were in touch with their feelings, who were leaders to the younger men than them. And like that was genuinely the most rewarding part of being there was watching their leaders in training program. So the organization Experience Camps gets all of their money from donations. So the camp is entirely free for every camper, which is incredible. And with that, they also are able to do just like incredibly fun experiences. Like we had like a bounce house night. We had like the most extravagant talent show I've ever seen. And like we had like a banquet at the end of the week that was like Oscars themed. The director was dressed up as an Oscar and like the gold, like it was just incredible. And there was the saying like for the kids, like just do it for the kids. And so taking everything over the top and just really being there for the kids and having fun alongside them and then also sharing your grief alongside them was just incredible and showing them that like you don't have to live in that like stereotypical movie sadness grief and that like there is joy within it and that there's so much just community and joy and connection that can be built there. So it like before I got there and like before the campers got there, people were kept being like, Emma, this camp is magical. Like this is an incredible place. Like it's magical. And I was like, yeah, I bet. And then at the end, I'm like, no, magical is genuinely the best word to describe it. We would have clinicals during the morning, and during one of those clinicals, one of the kids, I'm sharing about my own experience with the grief, and one of my campers asks me like, why my dad died from suicide and like why he made that decision. And so being able to like also share back like all the things people have been telling me for so many years of like it's not my fault, like all this, but then being able to share it back to a kid that is in the same situation as me, being able to like just share it and just being like it's not your fault, like all those things and share it back was it was definitely like a moment that it was like I feel different than how I did before. And knowing that I could express that and I believed it too was another crazy experience within that. And then also just like the last campfire, we're all like campering kid has the opportunity to like go up in front of their peers and share about their grief. And so say their person's name and anything else that they want. Um, and my bunk, we're all up there. I'm like, I'm so proud of you guys. Like, you guys are amazing. We're all crying. We're all like hugging each other and all this. And we like sit back down, and one of the campers just turns to me and is like, "Are we still gonna read my comic book tonight?" And so like just like laughing and yeah, and just being able to cheer these kids on, and like at the talent show losing my voice from screaming, and being able to support them in everything that they are, and that grief isn't all that they are, but they're also musicians and soccer players and artists and just cool people as well was really great.
That sounds, yeah, I think magical is probably the word to describe that. That sounds absolutely amazing. How did being at the camp, I guess, like, did it cause you to reflect back on like 13-year-old Emma and what it was like for you to be at their age grieving?
Yes. So it was very interesting to be there as like having my own grief, because there were so many times in my life that like even just hearing the word dad would like paralyze me for moments. And so to spend a week where grief is just all around you, like in the like quote unquote real world, grief isn't everywhere. You see it a lot. And when you're looking, you can find your grief in anything. But for the most part, like there's other things that aren't just grief. And there were other things at that camp, but at the end of the day, it was all, we all shared a commonality that was grief. And so it was really heavy there. And you never knew when a conversation about baseball would turn into a conversation about a parent and that has died, or how they're frustrated with their teachers and not understanding. And so I was incredibly shocked and proud of the fact that my own grief didn't come up that much. To be completely surrounded by it and have it not just like swarm me was like such a sign to me that like I'm healing and that I am finding a new way in grief. And of course, like my dad did show up in ways, and it was nice to be able to share with the campers, like being like, oh yeah, my dad, and then having them be able to add to the conversation with their own person or even other counselors and being able to share. But it never felt like I was drowning in grief, which I think if I had been at this camp even just like 3 years prior, how much I'd feel like I was drowning. I also thought a lot about how I don't know how much I think it would have taken a lot of work for me to be able to even like get on the bus to go to that camp as like if I was 13, and like how scary that would have felt to me, and seeing all these kids do it year and year again. And like a lot of those leaders in training had been at the camp since they were 6 years old, or 8 is the earliest you can go. And so like seeing that they just like keep coming back, and that it's their favorite week out of the year is really cool. And yeah, there wasn't a lot of my own grief, which I am still a little shocked by, because I was like, wow, I'm in such a different place with this, which is so cool.
I think it is a very cool feeling to get to that point and realize like I was
Yeah.
just in a situation that should have left me in tears and brought up all these
Yeah.
emotions, and I should be distraught right now, and you're like, I'm actually doing okay right
Yeah.
now. Like it's a pretty
Yeah.
cool feeling to get to that point. And of
Really.
course, you can completely retreat from that point, and the next time you're in that situation it can feel very different, but it's still just cool to have one of those moments of self-realization, I think.
Yeah.
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 After having the experience at the summer camp, and maybe just in general being where you are in your own grief journey, if you had the chance to go back to talk to 13-year-old Emma at that point in life, what would you want to say to her?
I think the first thing I would tell her is the same thing that that therapist told me, which is there is no right or wrong way to grieve as long as you're not hurting yourself or others. I think hearing that was definitely like a pivotal time in my life. And so to be able to learn that earlier, I think would be really valuable. It's such a fine balance of like, I want to protect younger me from some of the like trial and error and heartache, but then also going through that led me to right now, which is a place that I really like being. Um, and so it's such a balance. But I think the main thing would be like community is so important, and it's important for grief, it's important for not grief. And so finding your own village and finding your own community and expanding it always, and even just like going to the same gas station all the time and you just talk to the clerk, like that is community. Like that is part of my community. I live in an apartment complex and I know at least 15 of my neighbors' names and their dogs' names, mind you. And the thing, like, I feel like I live in like the 1950s where you like knock on your neighbor's door and you like ask them for sugar. Like, because the other day I needed AAA batteries. So I went and asked my neighbors, do you have some AAA batteries? And they're like, yeah, here you go. And then like 2 days later, they're like, do you have a drill? And I was like, yeah, I have a drill. Come and grab it. Like, and it's just like this community can be made anywhere. And so being willing to make it adds such a value to my life and prevents like aloneness and all the like symptoms of grief that are so intense of feeling alone and feeling like nobody gets you. And I've actually learned that one of my neighbors, she just turned 50 and her dad and her husband died from suicide. And so like her and I have been able to grow and like learn within each other. And uh she actually invited me to this walk for suicide later. And so it's really cool to be able to have people and like learn things. And I didn't learn that until I shared with her that my dad had died from suicide. And if I hadn't shared that, maybe she should wouldn't have shared it. So being willing to be vulnerable and build connections is something that I wish I had started to value earlier.
But that's very cool that you have that mindset and have actually acted on it. Like, I think a lot of people want that community. They want to build a
Yeah.
community, but they're like scared to take those steps. And I love what you're saying. Like, you can build a community with the
Yeah.
guy working at the gas station down the
Yeah.
street. Like, you doesn't need to, like it can show
Yeah.
up in any place. So I think that's very cool. So I guess reflecting on 8 years and where you are now in your grief journey, like when you think about your dad and when you think about losing your dad at that time in your life, like what are the emotions that come up for you now? What do you feel when you look back on it? Is there still like anger and sadness, or is it more peace? Like, how do you feel about it all now?
I think I was so angry about it. I was angry at him, I was angry at the world, I was angry at his family, I was angry at myself, and just all like I was really angry within like probably those first 2 years, but I wasn't quite ready to like express that anger and to let it out. And so through like writing letters to him and things like that, I've been able to move through a lot of that anger. And now I think a lot of the times within my own grief, the emotions I feel most frequently are sadness, which is natural, and then also like joy and gratitude for like looking back at who he who he was and how um both him being my dad and him being dead have shaped me into who I am today. And I can't change the fact that he died. I can't change who he was, but I can change how that's shifted me, and I can change the mentality that I have around that and being like, it happened, now what? Like, how am I going to either help someone else because of this, or how am I going to help myself learn, grow, and be better because of this? So I think I have a lot of gratitude for the experience, but also like sadness still happens all the time. And also like a longing to know more about him. I always love like learning new things about him. And so I think yeah, I think that's a big one too, is like I just am so curious about how he would have thought about this current thing, or how he thought about this past thing, or what it was like for him to be young. And so I think a lot of my grief now comes from like curiosity of what would he think?
My very last question for you is, what advice do you have for any of my listeners who are in the midst of their grief journey, who have maybe just lost a parent themselves? What advice do you have for them?
I think like if you're at the beginning of your grief journey, I think the biggest thing is just take control of it and realize that all of that emotion, all of that sadness it's there already. You experienced all of it the moment you found out that your person has died. And so now you're moving around with it, and you can either like learn the best way to pick it up, or you can keep letting it like drag behind you. And so like realizing like, okay, I can pick it up and I can put some on my shoulder, I can put some on my leg, and like move through it. Or I can give some to my friend and they can help me carry it around. And so like taking control of it and not just letting it drag behind you and therefore drag you down is probably the biggest thing. Is like, this is like, there's no changing this, unfortunately. And so learning the best ways to go about it for yourself. How you, Skylar, are going to grieve is going to be different. How I grieve, how my mom grieves is different from how my brother grieves, from like, and it's all different, but like trying to figure out what works for you. And, you know, for me, sometimes that's my Spotify playlist that's called Dead Dad. Sometimes it's going for a run. Sometimes it's just sitting and wondering. And it's all good and it's all okay. And again, as long as I'm not hurting myself or others, I'm grieving correctly. For years, my dad had taught me how to ride a bike. I associated biking with him so heavily that for years I did not ride a bike. I now have a bike on that patio back there because I like riding bikes. And even that for me is such an experience I associate with him. And it's like, I don't have to give this up now, but it's a time that I can spend where I feel like I'm almost spending it with my dad, because I'm spending it with a memory that's so heavy of him that I am spending it with him.
I can so now see how you were like the absolute best camp counselor. Thank you for literally
Yeah.
everything. I feel like everything you said felt like so wise and accurate and valuable. And I'm like taking so much of what you just said with me. So I can only imagine a lot of my listeners will feel the same way. So just
Okay.
thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, for opening up your heart, for all of that. This was amazing. I really appreciate you.
Yes, of course, Skylar. Anytime. It's so nice to like sit and have a conversation with you, because yeah, don't know if we've ever actually done that before.
First of many, I hope.
Yes, agreed.
Emma, thank you so, so much for joining me, for sharing your story with such honesty and insight and openness. I think my favorite thing I learned from this episode is what you said about there being no right or wrong way to grieve, as long as you are not hurting yourself or others. That is just such a powerful reminder, and I think it's something that all of us needed to hear. To all my listeners, if you would like to learn more about the summer camp that Emma worked at, I will have experience camps tagged in the show notes below. I will also have Emma's social media if you'd like to reach out to her. If this episode resonated with you, please, please, please leave a 5-star review, leave a comment under the episode for Emma to read, and of course, share this episode with someone who you think it will resonate with as well. Thank you all for listening. Emma, thank you so much. And as always, I will see you all next Thursday for another episode of Good Grief, Life After Loss.